Picture this. You finally do the responsible thing. You start saving money. Every month, you move a little bit into your savings account. $100 here, $200 there, maybe $300 in a particularly ambitious month when nobody invites you anywhere. And it feels good, responsible, disciplined, financially mature. You open your banking app occasionally just to admire the balance, not because you need to, just to check on your little financial child. And eventually, you reach $10,000, which feels fantastic until you notice something slightly disappointing. Your savings account is paying you 0.5% interest, which means after allowing the bank to enjoy your $10,000 for an entire year, they reward you with $50. Enough money to celebrate your financial discipline with dinner, assuming nobody orders dessert. Meanwhile, you keep hearing people talk about investing. Stocks, index funds, compound growth. People casually saying things like, my portfolio is up 14%. And suddenly you start wondering, wait, am I doing this wrong? Because saving money is absolutely important. But saving alone rarely builds serious wealth. At some point, your money needs to graduate from simply sitting there to actually doing something. And that's the transition from saving to investing. So in this video, we're going to break down the exact step-by-step path for making that transition without feeling overwhelmed and without taking the money protecting you from an emergency and throwing it into the stock market because someone on YouTube drew 3 lines on a chart. Let's start with the most important idea. Saving and investing are not the same thing. They have different jobs. Savings protect your money. Investments grow your money. And knowing when to use each one is where everything begins. Let's look at the math. Imagine you have $10,000 sitting in a savings account earning 1% interest. After 1 year, you have $10,100. Not bad. Your money made $100 while doing absolutely nothing, which is still more productive than my lazy ass on a Sunday afternoon. Now compare that with investing. Historically, the S&P 500 has returned roughly 10% per year on average over very long periods. That doesn't mean you get 10% every year. Some years are much better, some are much worse. And occasionally, the market behaves like someone unplugged the economy. But purely for illustration, if that same $10,000 compounded at 10% annually, after 1 year, you'd have $11,000. Initially, that difference doesn't look life-changing. $10,100 versus $11,000? Nice. But nobody is retiring to Monaco over it. The real difference appears when you give compounding time. After 20 years, $10,000 growing at 1% becomes roughly $12,200. Your money has spent 2 decades working and somehow produced approximately the financial output of a lazy intern. But $10,000 compounding at 10% becomes roughly $67,000. Same starting amount, same 20 years, completely different outcome. And that leads to the real problem.
Saving is where good financial habits begin. But once you've built enough safety, continuing to pile every spare dollar into cash starts to become questionable. So why do so many people stop at saving? The obstacle usually isn't mathematics, it's psychology. Saving feels safe. Investing feels risky. When $10,000 sits in your savings account, you know roughly what you'll see tomorrow. $10,000. Very relaxing, very predictable. Investments don't behave like that. You might have $10,000 on Monday, $10,300 on Wednesday, and $9,600 on Friday because someone at the Federal Reserve used an adjective investors didn't like. Markets move, sometimes up, sometimes down. And watching money you worked hard to earn temporarily become less money is not an experience the human brain particularly enjoys. So naturally, beginners think, I don't want to lose my savings. Completely reasonable. Which is exactly why moving from saving to investing should not mean moving all your savings into investments. It should happen in stages. And that brings us to step 1. Build a real emergency fund. Before you invest a single dollar, you need money that is there purely for emergencies. A common guideline is around 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses. And this money stays in cash or another safe, accessible place. It isn't investment money. It isn't buy-the-dip money. It's emergency money. Job loss, unexpected medical expenses, car repairs. Because one of the worst positions you can be in is being forced to sell investments because you suddenly need cash. Imagine the market falls 30%. Your $20,000 portfolio temporarily becomes $14,000. And at exactly that moment, your car decides it no longer believes in internal combustion. Now you need $4,000. Without emergency savings, you might be forced to sell investments during a major decline, because your mechanic would prefer to be paid in money rather than long-term optimism. That's the real purpose of an emergency fund. It keeps emergencies from forcing you to sell investments at the wrong time. And more importantly, it gives those investments time. Once that safety net exists, you can move on to step 2. Separate saving from investing mentally. Now that you have emergency money set aside, stop thinking about all of your money as one giant pile. Instead, imagine 2 buckets. Bucket 1, safety money. Bucket 2, growth money. Safety money has one job: be there when you need it. You don't need spectacular returns from it. You need accessibility, reliability, boredom. Safety money is basically the accountant of your financial life. Nobody is inviting it to parties, but when something goes wrong, you're very glad it's there. Growth money has a completely different job. This is money you don't expect to need for years, and because you have time, you can allow that money to fluctuate. It can rise, it can fall, it can occasionally make you question every financial decision you've ever made. Because its job isn't to protect you next Tuesday. Its job is to potentially grow over the long term. You're not investing money you might need next month. You're investing money you've deliberately assigned to the future. And once those 2 jobs are separated, you can actually start with step 3. Start investing small.
A lot of beginners imagine investing starts like this. You save $25,000, put on a suit, open 6 computer monitors, transfer the entire amount into a brokerage account, and immediately start saying things like, "I'm bullish on semiconductors." Fortunately, investing is a lot less dramatic than that. You can start with $50, $100, $200, whatever amount fits comfortably into your finances. Because at the beginning, your goal isn't to become rich. Your goal is to become comfortable with the process. You're learning how markets behave. You're learning how your brokerage account works. And most importantly, you're learning how you behave. Because everyone thinks they're a calm, long-term investor until their portfolio drops 8%. Then suddenly they're awake at 2:14 in the morning searching, "Will stock market ever recover?" Starting small gives you room to experience those emotions without every market decline feeling like a personal attack. And once investing starts to feel normal rather than terrifying, you can gradually increase the amount. But what exactly should you invest in? That brings us to step 4. Keep your investments simple. This is where beginners can get themselves into trouble. They finally decide to invest and immediately discover the internet. Suddenly they're researching day trading, options, crypto, leveraged ETFs. A man called Crypto Wolf 97 explaining why a coin you've never heard of is about to increase 4,000%. And before long, investing has somehow become a full-time casino with candlestick charts. It doesn't need to be complicated. For many long-term investors, diversified, low-cost index funds can provide a simple starting point. Instead of trying to identify which individual company will dominate the next decade, you can own tiny pieces of hundreds of companies. One company struggles, you own hundreds of others. One CEO decides to destroy $40 billion of shareholder value before lunch? Annoying, but potentially survivable. That's diversification. And Warren Buffett has repeatedly argued that low-cost S&P 500 index funds can make sense for ordinary investors who don't want to spend their lives analyzing individual companies. And that's really the appeal. You don't have to find the next Apple or predict which industry will dominate the next decade. Of course, that simplicity doesn't mean your returns are guaranteed or that the market won't fall. It simply means you're not betting everything on your ability to predict which individual company, sector, or trend will win next. And once you've chosen a simple, long-term approach, the next step is arguably the most important one. Step 5.
Stay consistent through market volatility.
The most powerful investing strategy for many people is also the least exciting: consistent investing. Let's look at an example. Suppose you invest $300 every month. If those investments compounded at an average annual rate of 8%, after 25 years, you'd have roughly $285,000. But here's the interesting part. You only contributed $90,000. The remaining roughly $195,000 came from investment growth. Your money started making money. Then that money started making money. Eventually, you have generations of dollars working for you, while the original $300 has become a distant ancestor everyone talks about at family gatherings. That's compounding. But compounding only gets the chance to work if you stay invested long enough. And that's where the difficult part begins. Because markets fall. Headlines become dramatic. Experts appear on television with extremely concerned facial expressions. Your phone starts sending notifications containing words like plunge, crash, fears, turmoil. And suddenly, doing nothing feels irresponsible. Surely you should sell something, buy something, move something, anything that makes it feel like you're in control. But for a long-term investor with a sensible plan, doing nothing can sometimes be the most disciplined thing you can do. Which brings us to the question every new investor eventually asks: what if I start investing and the market crashes? The honest answer is, eventually, it probably will. Market declines aren't unusual accidents. Corrections, bear markets, and crashes are part of investing. And when they happen, your portfolio will fall too. There is no secret button professional investors press that makes their account remain green while everyone else's turns red. But if you're investing for decades rather than months, you have something extremely valuable: time. And if you continue investing while prices are lower, your regular contributions buy more shares for the same amount of money. Think about how strange our brains are. Shoes down 20%? Fantastic. Laptop down 20%? Add to cart. Stock market down 20%? Sell everything. Capitalism has failed. Investors have a very strange relationship with discounts. Of course, lower prices don't guarantee a quick recovery, and a market decline can continue far longer than you expect. But if your time horizon is measured in decades, you don't need to predict the exact bottom. You need to avoid turning temporary market volatility into permanent financial damage by panicking. And that is the real challenge of investing: not predicting the next crash or finding the perfect stock. It's building a sensible system and sticking with it long enough to work. So, let's bring everything together. The transition from saving to investing doesn't need to be complicated. Step 1, build your emergency fund. Step 2, separate safety money from growth money. Step 3, start small. Step 4, keep your investments simple. And step 5, stay consistent, especially when the market becomes uncomfortable. But underneath all 5 steps is one simple idea. Saving and investing aren't competitors. Saving gives you stability. It protects you from the financial surprises life occasionally throws through your window. Investing gives your long-term money the opportunity to grow. Saving is your financial defense. Investing is your financial offense. And a strong financial plan needs both. Because eventually, your goal isn't just to have money sitting in an account. It's to build a system where some of the money you've already earned is helping you earn more. And that transition, from simply storing money to putting long-term money to work, is when saving starts becoming wealth building. Subscribe to Logical Money and learn how to make your money work a little harder than you do.